You found the next chapter of The Iron Rebel, a military sci-fi saga of war, exile, and political deception. If that sounds like your kind of story, hit subscribe and give this video a like. It helps the story reach new rebels like you. Chapter 10. The harsh reality of exile life on Eris Nexus was an unending grind, a brutal existence designed to strip away hope and humanity. Marcius Kane, once a revered general, was now just another worker among the damned. His days began in the pre-dawn gloom, the blaring klaxon of the colony's wake-up alarm echoing through the dingy quarters. The air was thick with the stench of sweat and industrial grease, a constant reminder of the drudgery that defined life here. Miners shuffled to their assignments with hollowed eyes, their movements mechanical, their spirits crushed by the weight of their exile. Kane had resolved to keep his head down, to blend into the crowd and avoid drawing attention. But anonymity was a luxury he could not afford. His stature, his bearing, and the unmistakable aura of command that clung to him made him stand out in a place where most were content to be invisible. Whispers followed him wherever he went, and the weight of those stares, half awe, half resentment, grew heavier with each passing day. In the mines, Kane worked alongside criminals, political exiles, and displaced Zarath survivors. The relentless labor, hauling ore, operating decrepit machinery, and enduring the barked orders of corrupt overseers, took its toll. The physical strain was immense, but it was the emotional isolation that began to wear on him. Even as he moved among the throngs of the exiled, he felt a growing distance, a void that his former life had left behind. He masked his frustration behind a stoic facade, but the pressure simmered beneath the surface, threatening to break through. In this grim setting, Kane first encountered the man who would challenge his sense of isolation. The meeting took place in one of the colony's cramped common areas, a dimly lit space where workers gathered to eat their meager rations and exchange whispered conversations. Kane had been sitting alone, methodically eating his meal, when the air in the room seemed to shift. Conversations quieted, and heads turned as a hulking figure entered the room. The man was a towering presence, his massive frame a tapestry of scars telling stories of survival and violence. His broad shoulders and deliberate movements carried the weight of authority, and his sharp eyes scanned the room with a predator's focus. His boots struck the metal floor with heavy thuds, each step commanding attention. His features, marred by battle, were intense and unyielding, and his expression was a faint sneer, as though perpetually unimpressed by the world around him. Sensing the change in the atmosphere, but unaware of the reason, Kane continued eating, his movements slow and deliberate. When the man stopped in front of his table, Kane looked up, meeting a gaze that was both appraising and challenging. "Can I help you?" Kane asked, his tone neutral but edged with wariness. The man smirked, tilting his head slightly. "So," he said, his voice a deep rumble, "this is the great Marcius Kane." Kane paused, confusion flickering in his eyes as he studied the stranger. The scars, the imposing stature, the voice, none of it sparked recognition. Slowly, he set his fork down, his expression cautious. "I don't believe we've met." The man's smirk deepened, his gaze unwavering. "We have met, just not least face to face. We have met on the battlefield." He straightened slightly as if preparing for the impact of his words. Taran Dralith, the name hit Kane like a jolt. Recognition dawned instantly, his sharp eyes narrowing as he processed the presence of the Zarath warlord. "Taran Dralith," he repeated, his tone measured. "The Butcher of Atraxis. You're a hard man to forget." Dralith's grin widened, his scarred face catching the dim light. "And you, the Ghost General, the Confederation's favorite weapon." Kane leaned back in his chair, his posture deceptively casual. "Your raids on the Atraxis supply line were innovative. A worthy opponent, I'll give you that." The smirk on Dralith's face twisted into something sharper, almost predatory. "High praise from the man who turned my fleets into scrap." The tension thickened as the two men regarded each other. To the onlookers, the room seemed to shrink around them, their shared history crackling like a live wire. "But here we are," Dralith continued, his tone hardening. "Stripped of our fleets, our armies, our purpose. What's left of the great Marcius Kane, I wonder? Kane's gaze didn't waver, his voice calm. Enough! And you? What's left of a warlord without his war? Dralith chuckled, the sound low and humorless. A survivor, Kane. And that's all that matters here. The room remained silent, the weight of their words pressing on everyone present. Finally, Dralith took a step back, his sharp eyes never leaving Kane. I'll be watching you, he said, his voice carrying a hint of both warning and intrigue. Let's see if the man lives up to the legend. Kane's lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. Likewise. As Dralith turned and walked away, the hum of whispered conversations resumed, but the memory of their exchange lingered in the air. Their first meeting was not just a clash of personalities, but a collision of two titans, each grappling with the weight of their shared exile and the enmity that bound them. Though the hostility between them was undeniable, so too was the grudging respect that neither dared yet to name. In the days that followed, Kane and Dralith's paths crossed repeatedly. The colony's close quarters made avoidance impossible, and their interactions remained charged with mutual disdain and wary respect. Yet beneath the surface, a grudging understanding began to take root. Both men were leaders without armies, warriors stripped of their causes, forced to navigate a world where survival was the only victory. One evening, as the sunless sky above Eris Nexus darkened to an even deeper grey, Kane found himself in the colony's central yard. He was tending to a piece of broken equipment, a task assigned by the overseers, when Dralith approached. The Zarath warlord leaned against a nearby wall, arms crossed, watching silently for a moment before speaking. "You're wasted here," Dralith said bluntly, his voice cutting through the ambient noise of the colony. Kane didn't look up from his work. "So are you." Dralith let out a dry laugh, low and humorless. "Fair enough. But I've been thinking. A man like you doesn't just accept exile. Not without a plan." Kane paused, his hands stilling as he turned to face Dralith. His gaze was steady, his tone cautious. "And what makes you think I have one?" Dralith's eyes narrowed slightly, his expression a mixture of intrigue and challenge. "Because you're Marcius Kane, and if you don't, you're not the man they say you are." Kane leaned back slightly, wiping his hands on a rag, his movements deliberate. "Maybe I'm not. Maybe the man they say I am died back on Valora Prime." Dralith stepped closer, his imposing frame casting a long shadow. "I don't buy that for a second. Men like us don't die that easily. We adapt. We endure. Or have I misjudged you?" Kane tilted his head, his lips pressing into a thin line. "You sound awfully invested in who I am." "Why? What's it to you?" Dralith's grin sharpened, his scarred face unreadable. "Call it curiosity. Or maybe I see potential where others see a broken man." Kane snorted, returning to his work. "You see what you want to see. Doesn't mean it's there." "Maybe," Dralith said, stepping back but keeping his gaze fixed on Kane. "But if it is, you'll have to choose sooner or later. Survival or purpose. You can't have both here." Kane paused again, his expression hardening. "I've had enough of choices that aren't mine to make." Dralith nodded, his grin fading into something more contemplative. "Fair point. But the way I see it, Kane, we're both stuck in the same pit. Might as well figure out how to climb out before it buries us." Kane met his gaze, the faintest flicker of acknowledgement in his eyes. "I don't climb with dead weight." Dralith chuckled, the sound more genuine this time. "Good thing I pull my own, then." As Dralith turned to leave, the tension in the air remained, heavy with unspoken challenges and possibilities. Their fragile coexistence continued, an intricate dance of mutual admiration and distrust, both men acutely aware that their survival might one day depend on the other. The air in the central yard of Eris Nexus was heavy with the acrid tang of machinery and sweat, a constant backdrop to the grinding monotony of life in the mining colony. Kane stood near a rusted conveyor belt, the faint hum of its gears underscoring the quiet intensity of his conversation with Taran Dralith. Nearby, a few exiles lingered in the shadows, pretending not to listen, though their glances betrayed their curiosity. The collision of two such titanic figures was impossible to ignore. Dralith, his towering form leaning against a decaying support column, watched Kane with an appraising gaze. His sharp features and battle-scarred face gave nothing away, though his tone was tinged with skepticism. "You've been thinking about a plan," he said, crossing his arms over his broad chest.
"To grab some power here, build yourself a little empire on this rock. Am I wrong?"
Kane didn't answer immediately. His expression was calm and controlled, though his eyes carried the weight of unspoken determination. "That's what you thought I was doing?" Dralith shrugged, his grin sharp. "You wouldn't be the first exile to try. You've got the presence for it, Kane. Even the overseers flinch when you walk by. But it's small thinking, isn't it? A kingdom of dust and despair? Doesn't seem like your style." Kane tilted his head slightly, his gaze narrowing. "And what makes you think I'm interested in ruling a pile of rubble?" Dralith's grin faded into a more serious expression. "Then tell me, what is your plan, Kane? Because I've seen plenty of men come through here with big ideas. None of them got very far." Kane stepped closer, his voice lowering as though he were speaking to the air itself. "This place is a dead end. A trap for men like us. But out there—" He gestured vaguely toward the horizon, where the grey haze of industrial smog met the dim, sunless sky. "Out there, the Confederation is rotting. It's held together by nothing but fear and greed, and we can tear it apart." Dralith straightened, his eyes narrowing as he studied Kane's face. "Tear it apart," he repeated slowly, the words hanging in the air like a challenge. "You're not just talking about power here, you're talking about war." Kane's lips curved into a faint smirk, though his tone remained cold and deliberate. "Call it what you want. The Confederation abandoned us. They abandoned you, your people, your cause. Why should we accept that? Why not make them pay?" The intensity of Kane's words seemed to ripple through the air, and for a moment Dralith said nothing. His scarred hands flexed at his sides, his mind racing as he weighed the implications. Finally he spoke, his tone hard. "You think you can unite this place? These miners, these outcasts, they've got nothing in common but desperation." "That's where you're wrong," Kane countered, his voice cutting through the growing tension. "Desperation is exactly what unites them. And us. You know as well as I do that survival alone isn't enough. People need a cause. A purpose. We can give them that." Dralith snorted, though there was no humour in the sound. "And you think they'll follow you? The man who helped drive the Zarath to the edge of extinction?" Kane's expression hardened, his gaze locking with Dralith's. "They'll follow you. You're a legend to them, Valis. A warlord who fought the Confederation to a standstill. I'm not asking them to trust me. I'm asking them to trust that we can win." The words struck a chord, though Dralith wasn't ready to admit it. He pushed off the column, his broad shoulders casting a long shadow over Kane. "You've got a sharp tongue, Kane. But talk isn't enough. What's your plan? How do you think you'll bring down the Confederation?" Kane stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "The Confederation's strength is a lie. They're stretched thin, barely holding their systems together. Their supply lines are vulnerable, their governors are corrupt, and their people are on the brink of rebellion. We don't need an army to win. We just need to push the right pressure points." Dralith's eyes flickered with a mix of skepticism and intrigue. "You're talking about sabotage?" "Guerrilla tactics. The kind of war that leaves no one standing." "I'm talking about making them fear us," Kane said, his tone sharp. "Not just as an enemy, but as an idea. We make it clear that no one is safe, that their power can be taken from them piece by piece. And when the cracks widen, when their systems start to fall, we step in and take what's left." Dralith regarded him in silence, his expression unreadable. Finally he spoke, his voice laced with a grudging respect. "You think big, Kane?" "I'll give you that. But ambition doesn't make you a leader. Men won't follow you just because you hate the Confederation." "Then they'll follow you," Kane said without hesitation. "You've got the reputation, the loyalty, And you've got the same reason I do. Nothing to lose. The words hung between them, the weight of their shared exile binding them in a way neither had anticipated. Dralith's sharp grin returned, though it was tempered by a lingering distrust. You're a dangerous man, Kane. Dangerous because you believe this might actually work. Kane's smirk deepened, his voice calm and unyielding. I don't believe it. I know it. For a long moment they stood in silence, two titans contemplating the fragile alliance forming between them. Finally, Dralith extended his hand, his scarred palm open. If you're lying, I'll make sure you regret it. Kane clasped the offered hand with a firm grip. If I'm lying, you won't have to. The fragile alliance was forged, built on equal parts necessity, ambition, and the simmering hatred they both shared for the Confederation. Around them, the whispers of their pact began to spread through the colony, a spark in the darkness that would soon grow into a fire. This chapter of the Iron Rebel comes to a close, but the war is far from over. If the story spoke to you, leave a like. It fuels the rebellion. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. New episodes drop every week. Until next time, stay sharp, stay defiant.
Varus Rumicius.